The golden glow of twilight filtered through the frosted glass windows of the velvet room, casting amber shadows across the polished mahogany bar where I stood, my hands moving with practiced precision as I prepared a perfect old-fashioned. At 24 years old, I had spent the last 3 years perfecting my craft behind this bar, memorizing not just drink recipes, but the stories of every regular who walked through those doors. Mrs. Chen always ordered a French 75 on Wednesdays after her pottery class. Marcus wanted his Manhattan extra dry with 3 cherries, never 2. Old Mr. Petrov preferred his vodka neat, served in a chilled glass that I kept in the freezer specifically for him. "Luna, table 6 needs their drinks 10 minutes ago," snapped Greg Thornton, our supervisor, his breath already carrying the telltale scent of whiskey even though his shift had only started an hour ago. His bloodshot eyes tracked my movements with the intensity of someone looking for any excuse to assert his dwindling authority. Greg had been with the Velvet Room for 15 years, watching as the bar's reputation slowly declined from Manhattan hotspot to neighborhood dive. He blamed everyone but himself for the empty tables and the dwindling profits. "Coming right up," I responded smoothly, already reaching for the premium gin that table 6's order required. My fingers danced across the bottles, measuring, pouring, garnishing with the efficiency of someone who had made these drinks thousands of times. The couple at table 6 were celebrating their anniversary, and I had taken the liberty of adding a complimentary chocolate-covered strawberry to their tray, a small gesture that cost the bar pennies but created memories worth far more. The evening rush was just beginning to build, and I could feel the familiar rhythm taking over my body. This was when I felt most alive, when the world narrowed down to the sound of ice clinking in shakers, the smooth pour of premium spirits, and the grateful smiles of customers who appreciated genuine craftsmanship. My dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and my simple black vest and white shirt were immaculate, despite the chaos of the dinner service. Presentation mattered in this business, almost as much as the quality of the drinks themselves. "You think you're so special, don't you?" Greg muttered as he passed behind me, deliberately bumping my shoulder hard enough to make me spill a few drops of vermouth. "Making those fancy garnishes, chatting up the customers like you own the place. You're just a bartender, sweetheart. Don't forget it." I bit back the sharp retort that rose in my throat. Greg had been getting progressively worse over the past few months, his drinking escalating along with his verbal abuse. I had complained to the general manager twice, but Mr. Patterson seemed more interested in avoiding confrontation than protecting his staff. The Velvet Room was hemorrhaging money, and everyone was too busy scrambling to save their own positions to care about a young bartender's complaints about a supervisor with seniority. What I didn't know was that sitting in the corner booth, partially obscured by the decorative screen that separated the main floor from the VIP section, was Damian Sterling. At 35, he had built an empire of boutique hotels across Manhattan, each one a carefully curated experience that catered to discerning travelers who valued authenticity over ostentation. He owned 49% of the Velvet Room, a recent acquisition that he had made after identifying the property as underperforming with massive potential. Damian was nursing a glass of scotch, his sharp gray eyes taking in every detail of the bar's operation. He had arrived unannounced, preferring to observe his investments in their natural state, rather than during the carefully orchestrated tours that managers loved to arrange. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, and his presence commanded attention, even though most of the staff had no idea who he was. He had watched me for the past hour, noting how I remembered every customer's preferences, how I turned simple drink service into an experience, how my smile remained genuine even when Greg deliberately made my job harder. The evening progressed, and the bar filled with the usual Thursday night crowd. I was in my element, mixing drinks, sharing stories, making recommendations that always delighted first-time visitors. A young couple celebrating a promotion asked for something special, and I created an off-menu cocktail using elderflower liqueur, fresh basil, and champagne that made the woman actually clap with delight. An older gentleman was clearly having a rough day, and I served his bourbon with a sympathetic ear and a small plate of the house nuts, warm from the oven. Luna, I need you in the storage room. Now. Greg's voice cut through the pleasant buzz of conversation, harsh and demanding. His face was flushed, and I could smell the alcohol radiating from him in waves. He had been drinking steadily throughout his shift, something I had documented mentally, but had no power to stop. Greg, I've got 6 drink orders pending and... I said now. His hand clamped around my upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks. We need to discuss your attitude problem. My heart began to race, not with fear exactly, but with the recognition that this situation had escalated beyond normal workplace tension. The storage room was in the back of the building, away from customers and cameras, a place where Greg had cornered other female staff members for conversations that always left them shaken and quiet. Let me finish these orders first, I said firmly, trying to pull my arm free. Whatever you need to discuss can wait 10 minutes. You don't tell me what can wait, Greg snarled, his grip tightening. You think you're better than me? You think these customers care about you? You're replaceable, Luna. There's a line of pretty girls who would kill for your job. He started dragging me toward the back hallway, his fingers bruising my arm as I stumbled over my feet. The customers were starting to notice, conversations faltering as they watched the scene unfolding. I saw Mrs. Chen half rise from her seat, concern written across her face. Marcus was already pulling out his phone, probably debating whether to call the police. What happened next changed everything. Damian Sterling rose from his booth with the fluid grace of a predator, his 6'2" frame suddenly seeming to fill the entire room. His handsome face was carved from stone, jaw set in a hard line that spoke of controlled fury. He moved swiftly across the floor, his expensive shoes making no sound on the hardwood as he closed the distance between himself and Greg. Remove your hand from her arm, now. His voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried an undercurrent of absolute authority that made everyone in the bar fall silent. Greg spun around, his drunken bravado making him stupid. Mind your own business, pal. This is between me and my employee. Your employee? Damian's eyebrow arched slightly, and I caught something dangerous flickering in his eyes. Interesting, because I own this establishment, and I don't recall authorizing supervisors to assault my staff. The blood drained from Greg's face so quickly, I thought he might faint. His hand released my arm as if I had suddenly become electrified, and he stepped back, swaying slightly on his feet. Mr. Sterling, I didn't. I was just... She has an attitude problem and I was going to... You were going to drag a female employee half your size into an isolated storage room while intoxicated on duty. Damian's words were precise, each one landing like a hammer blow. Do I have that correct? I stood frozen, my arm throbbing where Greg's fingers had dug in, watching this stranger defend me with a ferocity that was both terrifying and intoxicating. Damian Sterling. The name clicked into place suddenly. I had heard whispers about the mysterious investor who had bought into the Velvet Room, but I had never seen him before tonight. It wasn't like that, Greg stammered, his earlier aggression evaporating like morning mist. Luna and I were just going to have a conversation about her performance. Her performance? Damian turned to survey the bar, his gaze taking in the customers watching with rapt attention. I've been sitting here for 90 minutes. In that time, I've watched her serve 43 drinks, every single one perfect. She remembered 17 different customer preferences without consulting notes. She created a custom cocktail that had a customer literally applaud. She increased the check average at her station by 38% compared to the other bartender on duty. And she did all of this while you made her job progressively more difficult with your drinking and your harassment. The precision of his observations left me breathless. He had been counting. He had been watching not just me, but tracking metrics, analyzing performance, seeing everything with those sharp investor's eyes that missed nothing. Greg opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. He looked like a fish gasping on dry land, desperate and pathetic. "You're fired," Damien said simply. "Collect your personal items under supervision and leave the premises immediately. You'll receive your final paycheck minus any damages. If you contest this decision or speak negatively about this establishment or any of its employees, I will personally ensure that you never work in hospitality in this city again. Am I clear?" "You can't just," Greg started, but the look Damien gave him could have frozen hell itself. "I can, and I have. Leave. Now." Greg slunk toward the back office, his shoulders hunched in defeat. The entire bar remained silent, watching him go. Then, slowly, applause started from table 6, spreading across the room until everyone was clapping. Some customers were even standing, and I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Damien turned to me then, his expression softening slightly, though his eyes still held that razor-sharp intelligence that seemed to dissect everything it touched. "Luna Mitchell, correct? I've been reviewing the financials for the Velvet Room. This bar has been losing money for 18 months straight. Do you know why?" I swallowed hard, acutely aware that every eye in the bar was still on us, though the regular din of conversation was slowly resuming. My arm throbbed where Greg had grabbed me, but I ignored it, focusing instead on the man standing before me. Damien Sterling radiated an aura of controlled power that was utterly different from Greg's bullying aggression. This was authority earned through competence, not demanded through fear. "Poor management," I said quietly, but with conviction. Greg scheduled the wrong staff during peak hours, refused to update the cocktail menu despite customer requests, and bought cheap liquor while charging premium prices. The regulars noticed. They started going elsewhere. Damien's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Exactly. I've been trying to understand why a bar in this location, with this building's history and potential, was bleeding money. Tonight, I got my answer. The problem wasn't the concept or the location. It was leadership." He gestured to the bar where 6 drink orders still waited to be completed. "Finish your orders, then meet me in the office in 30 minutes. We need to talk about your future here." My heart stuttered in my chest. "My future?" "Consider it a job interview," he said, and this time the smile reached his eyes, transforming his stern face into something almost warm. "Though based on tonight's performance, it's more of a formality." He walked away before I could respond, moving through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who owned half of Manhattan. Customers parted for him instinctively, and I noticed several women watching his departure with appreciative glances. Damien Sterling was handsome, in a way that was almost unfair, all sharp cheekbones and broad shoulders, with silver threading through his dark hair that only added to his distinguished appearance. I returned to the bar in a daze, my hands moving on autopilot as I completed the pending orders. The other bartender, Jamie, sidled up to me with wide eyes. "Holy shit, Luna. Do you know who that was? Damien Sterling owns like half the boutique hotels in Manhattan. He's worth millions, and he just fired Greg for you." Jamie's voice was pitched low, but excitement made it carry. "What do you think he wants to talk about?" "I have no idea," I admitted, though my mind was racing with possibilities. A job interview could mean anything from a promotion to a transfer to one of his other properties. Or it could mean he was about to explain very politely why I would be let go along with Greg, cleaning house entirely. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of drinks and congratulations. It seemed every regular wanted to buy me a shot in celebration of Greg's termination, though I politely declined them all. I needed to be completely clear-headed for whatever conversation awaited me. Mrs. Chen squeezed my hand as she left, telling me I deserved better than how I'd been treated. Marcus slipped me a $50 bill as a tip, winking and saying, "You're going places, kid." When my replacement arrived for the closing shift, I untied my apron with shaking hands and made my way to the office. The hallway seemed longer than usual, each step weighted with anticipation and nervousness. I could hear raised voices from inside, the general manager Mr. Patterson's whiny tone alternating with Damien's calm, implacable responses. But we can't just fire supervisors without documentation and proper procedures. I can fire anyone I want. I own this establishment. Or have you forgotten that detail? Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, if you had any respect, you would have addressed the hostile work environment months ago when Luna filed her complaints. Complaints that I had to discover by reading through HR files because you certainly never informed me. I knocked softly on the door, interrupting what was clearly an uncomfortable conversation for Mr. Patterson. Damien's voice called out for me to enter, and I stepped into the cramped office that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Mr. Patterson looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. His comb-over was disheveled, and sweat stained the armpits of his cheap shirt. Damien, in contrast, looked as fresh as if he had just arrived. His suit still crisp, his expression neutral but his eyes sharp as broken glass. "Luna, please sit," Damien said, gesturing to the only other chair in the room besides the one he occupied behind the desk. Mr. Patterson remained standing, looking like he desperately wanted to escape, but didn't dare leave without permission. I sat, folding my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. This close to Damien, I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle with notes of cedar and bergamot. It was the kind of scent that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. "I've been conducting an analysis of all my hospitality investments," Damien began, his gray eyes locked on mine with unsettling intensity. "The Velvet Room has the worst performance metrics of any property in my portfolio. But tonight, I witnessed something interesting. I watched you turn every customer interaction into a positive experience. I saw you upsell without being pushy, create customer loyalty through genuine service, and maintain professionalism under hostile working conditions." He pulled out a tablet and turned it to show me a spreadsheet covered in numbers and graphs. "Your section generated 43% more revenue than any other bartender on staff, and customer satisfaction scores are significantly higher during your shifts. You have a gift, Luna. The question is whether you're interested in using it beyond this bar." "What exactly are you offering?" I asked, proud that my voice remained steady despite the racing of my heart. "I'm opening a new hotel in 3 months, the Sterling Grand, Upper East Side. It's going to be the flagship of my collection, targeting ultra-high-net-worth clients who value discretion and exceptional service. The rooftop bar will be the crown jewel of the property. I need someone to design the beverage program, hire and train the staff, and manage the operation. Someone who understands that hospitality is about creating experiences, not just serving drinks." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I'm offering you the position of beverage director. Your salary would be triple what you make here, plus profit-sharing bonuses. You would have complete creative control over the menu and operations, with a budget that would make your head spin. You would report directly to me." I couldn't breathe. Triple my salary, complete creative control, a flagship property. It was everything I had dreamed about during those long nights mixing drinks while Greg breathed whiskey fumes down my neck and told me I was lucky to have a job. Why me? The question escaped before I could stop it. "You must have access to experienced beverage directors, people with impressive resumes and industry connections." Damien leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers under his chin. "I've hired plenty of people with impressive resumes. What I've learned is that credentials don't equal competence. You have something that can't be taught in hospitality school. You genuinely care about the customer experience. You notice details. You remember that Mr. Chen drinks French 75s on Wednesdays, and that Marcus wants 3 cherries, not 2. That attention to individual preference, that dedication to craft, that's what creates legendary establishments. I don't have formal training," I warned, even as part of me screamed to accept immediately before he changed his mind. "I learned everything on the job." "Some of the best talents in this business are self-taught," Damien countered. "What you lack in formal training, you make up for in instinct and work ethic. I'm not looking for someone who can regurgitate textbook theory. I'm looking for someone who can create an experience that makes guests return again and again." Someone who can turn a hotel bar into a destination. Mr. Patterson made a strangled noise from his position by the door. Mr. Sterling, Luna is under contract here for another 6 months. We can't just... Her contract included provisions about a safe working environment, Damien said coldly, not even bothering to look at the general manager. Given tonight's events and the documented complaints that were ignored, I'm confident any judge would agree that contract is null and void. But to avoid legal complications, I'll buy out the remainder of her contract. Consider it a severance payment for the hostile environment she endured under your management. He returned his attention to me. I need an answer, Luna. I don't make offers like this frequently, and I don't keep them open indefinitely. Are you ready to step into a larger role? Are you ready to prove that you're more than just a talented bartender? Time seemed to slow down. I thought about the last 3 years of my life. The bruises on my arm from Greg's grip. The countless times I had bitten my tongue to keep my job. I thought about my tiny studio apartment in Queens. The student loans that seemed to grow faster than I could pay them. The dreams I had buried under layers of practical survival. Yes, I said firmly. I accept. Damien's smile was genuine this time, and it transformed his entire face. Excellent. You start Monday. We'll spend the first month planning the beverage program together. I've cleared my schedule for strategy sessions twice a week. Bring your ideas, Luna. All of them. I want this bar to be unlike anything Manhattan has ever seen. He stood and extended his hand. I rose and shook it, his grip firm and warm. Welcome to Sterling Hotels. I think this is the beginning of a very productive partnership. As I left the office, walking past a stunned Mr. Patterson, I felt like I was floating. The bar had emptied except for the closing staff, but Jamie rushed over immediately. Well, what happened? Are you fired? Are you getting promoted? I'm leaving, I said, and even I could hear the wonder in my voice. I'm going to be the beverage director for Damien Sterling's new flagship hotel. Jamie's jaw literally dropped. You're kidding. Luna, that's incredible. When do you start? Monday. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity that left me exhilarated and exhausted in equal measure. True to his word, Damien cleared his schedule for our twice-weekly strategy sessions, which always took place in his sleek office overlooking Central Park. The space was a study in understated luxury, all clean lines and expensive materials, with walls covered in architectural renderings of his various properties. Our first meeting was slightly awkward. I arrived in my best professional outfit, a navy dress that I had bought specifically for the occasion, carrying a leather portfolio filled with ideas I had been scribbling down for years. Damien was on a phone call when I arrived, speaking rapid-fire Italian to someone about construction delays at one of his Rome properties. He gestured for me to sit, and I tried not to stare at how effortlessly he switched between languages, his voice taking on different cadences and rhythms. When he finished the call, he turned his full attention to me, and I was once again struck by the intensity of his focus. Damien didn't just listen. He absorbed information, those gray eyes tracking every word, every gesture, processing and analyzing at a speed that was almost intimidating. Show me what you've been thinking about, he said simply, pushing aside the reports he had been reviewing. I opened my portfolio with slightly trembling hands. I've organized my ideas into 3 categories: cocktail program, customer experience, and staff culture. Can I start with the cocktail program? Please. I spread out my sketches and notes, years' worth of observations and innovations that I had never had the authority to implement. The trend in high-end establishments is molecular mixology and elaborate presentations. But I think we should go in the opposite direction. Classic cocktails, executed perfectly, with a focus on quality ingredients and personal service. No smoke bubbles or flaming garnishes, just exceptional drinks made by bartenders who know their craft. Damien leaned forward, studying my proposed menu. Why classics? Because they're timeless. Because someone who orders a Manhattan at 20 will still order one at 60. And because perfect execution of a classic is far more impressive than a mediocre attempt at innovation. I pointed to my notes. But we elevate them. We make our own bitters. We age our spirits in-house for signature finishes. We source obscure vintage spirits for customers who want something special. Every drink becomes a story. I like it, Damien said slowly, and I could see his mind working, already envisioning the implementation. It's unexpected. Every rooftop bar in Manhattan is trying to be trendy and Instagram-worthy. You're proposing we be the opposite, timeless rather than trendy. Exactly, and for the customer experience, I flipped to the next section of my portfolio. I want to implement a preference database. Every guest who orders a drink gets logged. Their preferences, their stories, their celebrations. So when Mrs. Chen visits us for the second time, we already know she drinks French 75s. We remember her anniversary. We treat regulars like family and first-timers like they're about to become regulars. Damien was nodding now, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the desk. That requires significant staff training. Most bartenders can barely remember orders from 1 hour to the next, let alone weeks or months later. Which brings me to staff culture, I said, gaining confidence as I saw his genuine interest. I want to hire people who care. Not necessarily people with impressive resumes, but people who understand service. We pay them well above industry standard. We give them profit-sharing incentives. We create an environment where they want to stay, where they take pride in their work. And we fire anyone immediately who creates a hostile environment. The last comment hung in the air between us, and Damien's expression softened slightly. No more Gregs. No more Gregs, I confirmed. I learned more from terrible bosses than good ones. I know exactly the kind of culture I don't want to create. We spent the next 4 hours drilling into details, debating everything from glassware selection to staff uniforms. Damien challenged every assumption, playing devil's advocate, forcing me to defend my ideas with data and logic. It should have been stressful, but instead it was thrilling. He treated me like an equal, not a subordinate, genuinely interested in my perspective even when he disagreed. You've thought about this deeply, he said finally, as the sun began to set over the park, painting his office in shades of amber and gold. Most people I interview have superficial ideas they've borrowed from other establishments. You've clearly been planning this for years. I had a lot of time to think during slow shifts, I admitted. And when your supervisor makes your life miserable, you spend a lot of nights lying awake imagining how you would do things differently. Greg did you a favor then, though I don't recommend his management style. Damien stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. I built my business by identifying wasted potential, underperforming properties that needed better management, talented people stuck in situations that didn't recognize their value. You were both. And now you have a chance to prove that my instinct was correct. I won't let you down, I promised. He turned back to me, and there was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. I know you won't. Same time Thursday? Our strategy sessions fell into a comfortable rhythm. We would meet on Mondays and Thursdays, always in the late afternoon when the light was softest, and Damien's caffeine intake had progressed from espresso to tea. He had a habit of pacing when he was thinking, and I learned to present my ideas while he walked circles around his office, occasionally stopping to stare out the window or scribble notes on the whiteboard he kept on the far wall. I discovered that Damien Sterling was not at all what I had expected. His reputation in the industry was that of a ruthless businessman who fired underperformers without hesitation and drove hard bargains that left his competitors cursing. But in private, he was thoughtful, funny in a dry way that caught me off guard, and genuinely passionate about creating exceptional guest experiences. Why hotels? I asked him one Thursday, emboldened by 3 months of working together. You could invest in anything. Why hospitality? Damien paused in his pacing, considering the question with the seriousness he brought to everything. Because hotels are about moments. People stay in hotels during the most important times of their lives. Weddings, anniversaries, business deals that change their careers, first dates, last vacations. If we do our job right, we become part of their best memories. That matters to me. It was the most personal thing he had shared, and I found myself studying him with new understanding. Beneath the tailored suits and the intimidating competence was someone who genuinely cared about the human element of his business. As we moved into the final weeks before the Sterling Grande's opening, our meetings became more frequent and extended later into the evening. We would order dinner from the restaurant on the ground floor of his building, eating Thai food or Italian at the conference table, while reviewing staff applications and discussing training protocols. "You're going to be great at this," Damien said one night, watching me organize candidate files into different stacks. "You have an eye for people. You can spot the ones who genuinely care versus the ones who are just going through the motions." "I learned from watching you," I admitted. "The way you interviewed candidates for the hotel manager position. You didn't ask about their experience or credentials first. You asked them about the best guest experience they had ever witnessed and why it was memorable. The ones who told specific stories with genuine emotion, those were the ones you called back." "You were paying attention." He sounded pleased. "Most people just want to know the decision, not understand the process." "I want to understand everything," I said honestly. "This is the biggest opportunity of my life. I'm not going to waste it." Damien set down his pen and looked at me directly, his gray eyes serious. "Luna, can I ask you something personal?" My heart rate kicked up slightly. In all our meetings, we had maintained a strictly professional relationship. Friendly, yes, but with clear boundaries. "Of course." "Why were you still working at the Velvet Room? With your talent, you could have applied to any of the top establishments in the city. Why stay somewhere that didn't value you?" I took a breath, considering how much to share. "Fear, mostly. I grew up in foster care. Never had stability. Never had anyone believing in me. When I got the job at the Velvet Room, it felt like the first real thing I had achieved on my own. I was terrified that if I reached for more, I would fall and have nothing. Better to be undervalued than unemployed." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Damien nodded slowly. "I get that, more than you might think. I grew up in a trailer park in Ohio. My father gambled away every dollar we had. I learned early that the only person who would invest in my future was me. So I worked 3 jobs through college, slept 4 hours a night, and made every sacrifice necessary to get out. Fear of falling back to where I started drove every decision I made for years." I stared at him, this man in his $1,000 suit, working from an office that probably cost more than some people's houses. I never would have guessed. That's the point. We create the image we want the world to see. But underneath, we're all still those scared kids trying to prove we deserve to be here. He smiled, but it was tinged with old pain. The difference is recognizing when fear is protecting you versus when it's holding you back. You were ready to move past the Velvet Room long before I walked in that night. "Maybe," I conceded, "but I needed someone to believe in me first. To show me it was possible." "And now?" "Now I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure," I admitted. "In 2 weeks we open. I have a team of 12 bartenders who are looking to me for leadership. I have a menu that I created from scratch. I have an opportunity to either prove you right or prove you made a terrible mistake." Damien laughed, and the sound was rich and genuine. "Luna, I don't make mistakes about people. I've been doing this too long. You're going to exceed every expectation. The only person who doubts that is you." The opening approached with frightening speed. The hotel construction finished 3 days ahead of schedule, and suddenly we were doing staff training in the actual space. The rooftop bar was breathtaking, all floor-to-ceiling windows and elegant wood accents, with a view that stretched across Manhattan like a glittering promise. Damien had approved every detail I had requested without question. The custom glassware etched with the hotel logo, the state-of-the-art refrigeration system that allowed us to store our house-aged spirits at perfect temperatures, the sound system that could shift from sophisticated jazz to modern electronica, depending on the crowd. He had given me a budget that made my head spin, and then told me to spend whatever was necessary to make the vision perfect. The training sessions revealed something unexpected about Damien Sterling. He showed up for every single one, despite having a dozen other properties demanding his attention, and a schedule that would have broken most people. He sat in the back of the room while I ran the staff through service protocols, occasionally taking notes, but never interrupting. When I stumbled over explaining the proper technique for expressing citrus oils, he stood up and demonstrated the motion with such casual expertise that my entire team stared. "You bartended?" I asked after the session, genuinely shocked. "How do you think I worked 3 jobs through college?" He smiled at my expression. "I worked every position in hospitality at some point. Kitchen porter, front desk, valet, bartender. If you don't understand the work, you can't evaluate whether it's being done well." I found myself watching him more carefully after that, noticing little things I had missed. The way he thanked the construction workers by name and asked about their families. How he arrived before everyone else and left last, always checking that details were perfect. The morning I arrived at 6 a.m. for an early delivery and found him already there, in jeans and a t-shirt, helping the team move furniture because we were short-handed. He worked like someone who remembered what it felt like to struggle, and that memory kept him humble even as his net worth climbed into ridiculous territory. "You're different than I expected," I told him one evening, a week before opening. We were alone in the bar, doing a final inventory check and tasting the cocktails I had created for the launch menu. Damien looked up from the old-fashioned he was sampling. "How so?" "When you fired Greg, I thought you might be this intimidating tyrant who ruled through fear. But you're not. You're demanding, yes, but you're also kind. You remember everyone's names. You ask about their lives. You work harder than anyone else. I'm only a tyrant when people waste my time or treat others poorly," he said, setting down his glass. "Life's too short to work with assholes or tolerate mediocrity. But if someone is genuinely trying, giving their best effort, I'll support them completely. You've given me your best effort every single day since you started. Why would I be anything but supportive? Most bosses aren't like that. Most bosses are insecure. They see talented employees as threats rather than assets. I see them as investments that pay dividends." He gestured to the bar around us. "Everything you've created here is going to elevate this hotel's reputation. Your success is my success. Only an idiot would interfere with that." The Manhattan I had mixed for him was perfect, if I did say so myself. 3 ounces of rye aged in our custom barrels, sweet vermouth, bitters, served up with a perfect brandied cherry. Damien took a sip and closed his eyes, and I felt an unexpected flutter in my chest at his expression of pure pleasure. "This is exceptional," he said quietly. "This is exactly what I hoped we would create." "We make a good team," I ventured, the late hour and the intimacy of the empty bar making me brave. "We do." His eyes met mine, and for a moment something electric passed between us. Then he cleared his throat and checked his watch. "It's getting late. You should go home and get some rest. Big week ahead." I wanted to stay. I wanted to ask what that look meant, whether he felt the connection that had been building between us during months of close collaboration. But he was right. We had a massive week ahead, and professionalism needed to be maintained. The Sterling Grande's opening was everything I had dreamed and more. The press coverage was extraordinary, with features in the New York Times, Forbes, and Architectural Digest. Food and beverage bloggers descended on us, documenting every detail, and the reviews were unanimous in their praise. One critic wrote, "The rooftop bar at Sterling Grande represents a return to timeless elegance in an industry obsessed with fleeting trends." Beverage director Luna Mitchell has created something truly special, a space where every drink is crafted with care, and every guest is treated like a cherished regular. We were fully booked for the first month within 3 days of opening. Celebrities started requesting our VIP section. A Silicon Valley billionaire tried to buy out the entire bar for his birthday, and was politely refused because we didn't do exclusive events. The wait list for tables stretched to 3 weeks. Damien watched it all with quiet satisfaction, standing at the edge of the bar during our busiest nights, observing the operation with those analytical eyes. He never interfered, never second-guessed my decisions, but his presence was a constant reassurance. When a difficult customer complained about the price of our vintage spirits, Damien materialized at my side and calmly explained the provenance and rarity of each bottle until the customer not only apologized, but ordered the most expensive pour on the menu. "How do you do that?" I asked afterward. "Make people feel simultaneously chastised and charmed?" "I treat them like intelligent adults who temporarily forgot their manners," he said with a shrug. "Most people respond well to being given dignity rather than being made to feel stupid." Our post-shift debriefs became a ritual. After the bar closed and my team finished cleaning, Damien and I would sit at a corner table and review the night's service. What worked, what could be improved, which staff members were excelling, and which needed additional training. These sessions often stretched into the early morning hours, fueled by espresso and the kind of easy conversation that comes from mutual respect and shared ambition. "You need to go home sometime," I told him one night after he yawned for the 3rd time. It was 2 a.m., and we were reviewing the quarterly projections he had brought. "I could say the same to you," he countered. "You're here every night until closing. You're going to burn out." "This is my dream," I said simply. "I'll rest when I'm dead." "Luna." His voice was suddenly serious. "I'm going to tell you something that took me too long to learn. Success means nothing if you destroy yourself achieving it. I spent my 20s and early 30s working myself into exhaustion, telling myself that rest was for people who didn't want success badly enough. Then I had a minor heart attack at 33 and realized that being successful and dead is just being dead." I stared at him, shocked. "You had a heart attack?" "Stress-induced. Nothing permanent, thank God. But it was a wake-up call." He rubbed his chest absently as if remembering. "I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm saying learn when to step back. Trust your team. Take a day off occasionally. The bar will survive without you for a few hours." "Did you take your own advice?" I challenged. He laughed. "Eventually, with significant prodding from my doctor and my therapist. But I'm serious, Luna. You've built something incredible here. Don't sacrifice your health maintaining it. That's an order from your boss." "Is that what you are?" I asked quietly. "My boss?" Something shifted in his expression. "What else would I be?" The question hung between us, weighted with all the unspoken tension that had been building for months. We were alone in the bar, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and suddenly I was acutely aware of how close we were sitting. "Damien," I started, not sure what I was going to say. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen and swore softly. "I have to take this. Tokyo property. They're 8 hours ahead." He stood, putting professional distance between us. "Go home, Luna. Get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." I watched him walk away, phone already to his ear, his voice shifting into the calm authority he used for crisis management. The moment had passed, and I wasn't sure if I was relieved or disappointed. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. The bar's success continued to grow, but Damien and I maintained careful professional boundaries. He still attended our debriefs, but ended them earlier, always finding a reason to leave before the conversation could drift into personal territory. I told myself it was for the best. Workplace romances were complicated, and I couldn't afford to jeopardize everything I had built. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, typically our slowest night, and I had sent most of my staff home early. I was doing the final cash out when I heard shouting from the entrance. Greg Thornton had somehow made it past security, and he was drunk, angry, and looking for me. "You ruined my life," he screamed, stumbling into the bar. "I can't get hired anywhere because of you. Because of what you said about me." I stood frozen behind the bar, my hand instinctively reaching for the phone to call security. "Greg, you need to leave. You're trespassing. I'm not going anywhere until you tell Sterling the truth. Tell him you lied about me, that I never did anything wrong. Tell him." Greg advanced on the bar, and I could smell the alcohol radiating from him. "I didn't lie. You assaulted me. Multiple witnesses saw it." "I barely touched you. You're just some oversensitive little—" He grabbed a bottle from the bar and smashed it against the counter, sending glass flying everywhere. "You want to play victim? I'll give you something real to cry about." I backed away, my heart pounding, looking for an escape route. Greg was between me and the exit, and the broken bottle in his hand glinted dangerously under the lights. Then Damien was there, appearing from nowhere, like an avenging angel. He moved with a speed that belied his size, grabbing Greg's wrist and twisting until the bottle clattered to the floor. In one smooth motion, he had Greg face down on the bar, arm locked behind his back. "Security is on their way," Damien said, his voice deadly calm despite the fury in his eyes. "You have two choices. Leave now voluntarily, or leave in handcuffs when the police arrive. Either way, you're done." Greg struggled weakly, but Damien's grip was unbreakable. "She ruined everything," Greg slurred. "Everything." "No," Damien said quietly. "You ruined your own life by being a bully and a drunk. Luna just refused to be your victim. Now choose, police or exit." "Exit," Greg mumbled, all the fight draining out of him. Damien released him, and security personnel materialized to escort Greg out of the building. I was shaking, adrenaline flooding my system now that the danger had passed. Damien turned to me immediately, his stern expression transforming into concern. "Are you hurt? Did any of the glass hit you?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. My hands were trembling so badly I had to clasp them together to keep them still. The reality of what had almost happened was crashing over me in waves, and suddenly I couldn't catch my breath. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now." Damien was around the bar in seconds, his hands gentle on my shoulders. "Luna, look at me. Deep breaths, in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. Just breathe." I focused on his voice, using it as an anchor to pull myself back from the edge of panic. His hands were warm and steady, grounding me in the present moment. Gradually my breathing slowed, the shaking subsided, and I became aware that I was gripping his arms hard enough to leave marks. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I don't know why I'm reacting like this." He didn't even touch me. "You're experiencing an adrenaline crash after a threatening situation. It's completely normal." Damien's thumb brushed across my shoulder in a gentle, soothing motion. "And you have nothing to apologize for. That man terrorized you for years, and tonight he came back to finish what he started. Your reaction is completely justified." "How did you know to come up here?" I asked. "The bar was supposed to be closed." "I was downstairs reviewing the restaurant's quarterly reports. I heard the commotion and came to investigate." His jaw tightened. "I should have had better security protocols. He should never have made it past the lobby. It's not your fault. I'm responsible for the safety of everyone in this building. That includes you. Especially you." The last two words came out softer, more personal, and when I looked up at him, his gray eyes were filled with an emotion that made my heart stutter. Especially me, I echoed. Damien's hands were still on my shoulders, and I could feel the tension in his body, like he was holding himself back from something. Luna, we need to talk. Not as employer and employee, as two people who have been circling around something for months and pretending it doesn't exist. My breath caught. Damien. I tried to maintain professional boundaries. I told myself that anything beyond our working relationship would be inappropriate, that I was your boss, and any romantic involvement would create complications. But Luna, I think about you constantly. Not just about the bar or your performance. About your laugh, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating, how your whole face lights up when a customer tells you they love their drink. I can't stop thinking about you, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. The world seemed to narrow down to the two of us, standing in the empty bar with broken glass at our feet, and my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I think about you too, I admitted quietly. I tell myself all the same things. That it would be complicated, that I could jeopardize my career, that I should focus on proving myself professionally before considering anything personal. But then you walk into a room, and I forget all the logical reasons why this is a bad idea. Is it a bad idea? Damien asked, his voice rough. Because from where I'm standing, two intelligent adults who respect each other, share similar values, and happen to have undeniable chemistry, that seems like the opposite of a bad idea. What about work? The bar? What happens if we try this and it doesn't work out? He finished my thought. Then we handle it like adults. We maintain professionalism. We ensure it doesn't impact the business. But Luna, what if we don't try? What if we spend the rest of our lives wondering what might have been because we were too afraid to take a chance? He was right. I had spent too much of my life playing it safe, choosing security over possibility, and look where it had gotten me before Damien walked into the velvet room that fateful night. I had been stuck, stagnant, accepting mistreatment, because I was too scared to reach for something better. I'm not afraid, I said, and realized it was true. Not anymore, not with you. Damien's smile was brilliant, transforming his normally serious face into something joyful and youthful. Good. Because I want to take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not takeout in my office while we discuss beverage inventory. I want to learn about you. Not your drink recipes or your management philosophy. You, Luna Mitchell, the woman behind the bartender. I'd like that, I said, and found myself smiling back at him. How about tomorrow? I know a small Italian place in the village. Very private, incredible food, and the owner owes me a favor so we can have the back room to ourselves. That sounds perfect. Damien's hands moved from my shoulders to gently cup my face, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. I'm going to kiss you now. If that's not okay, tell me. Instead of answering with words, I rose on my toes and closed the distance between us. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like we were both testing unfamiliar territory. Then Damien's arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened into something that made my knees weak and my pulse race. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that for months. Why did you wait so long? I asked. Because I needed to be sure. Sure that what I was feeling wasn't just physical attraction or the thrill of a successful business venture. Sure that you felt the same way. Sure that I could offer you something real, not just a workplace fling that would complicate everything. He pulled back slightly to look at me directly. I don't do casual, Luna. If we're doing this, I'm all in. I want to see where this goes. No games, no ambiguity. I want you, and I want everyone to know it. Won't that create problems with the staff? With your business partners? The staff will adjust. They respect you, and they'll respect us maintaining professionalism at work. As for my business partners, they can deal with it. I'm 35 years old. I've earned the right to date whoever I want without asking permission. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. Unless you're worried about what people will say. I thought about it honestly. I'd be lying if I said the optics don't concern me. The young bartender dating her older, wealthy boss. Some people will assume I slept my way into this position, that I don't deserve my success. And what do you say to those people? I say they can look at my work and draw their own conclusions. I earned this position before we ever kissed, and anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about. I surprised myself with the conviction in my voice. That's my girl, Damien said proudly. Let them talk. We know the truth, and that's what matters. Our first official date was everything I could have hoped for and more. The Italian restaurant was indeed small and intimate, the kind of place where the owner knew every customer by name. Damien had somehow arranged for them to prepare dishes that weren't on the menu, each course a revelation of flavors and techniques. But more than the food, I loved the conversation. Freed from the constraints of our professional relationship, we talked about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Ohio, about his father's gambling addiction, and his mother's quiet strength, about putting himself through college and business school, about the risks he took buying his first property, and the terror of potentially losing everything. I shared my own story. The foster care system that had shuffled me between homes, the high school teacher who had encouraged me to apply for college scholarships, the student loans that still felt crushing. The moment I first stood behind a bar and realized I had found something I was genuinely good at. We're both fighters, Damien observed, reaching across the table to take my hand. We both clawed our way up from nothing. Maybe that's why we understand each other so well. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe you're just annoyingly perceptive and I can't hide anything from you. He laughed. There is that. We went on more dates. Dinner at exclusive restaurants, a private tour of a whiskey distillery in upstate New York, a weekend trip to Boston where Damien was checking on one of his properties, and I tagged along to explore the city's cocktail scene. Each outing revealed new layers to this man who had become so important to me. At work, we maintained strict professionalism. No public displays of affection, no special treatment. If anything, Damien was harder on me than before, challenging every decision and pushing me to constantly improve. But after hours, in the privacy of his penthouse apartment or my small place in Queens, we were just Luna and Damien, two people falling increasingly in love. Move in with me, he said one night, about 3 months into our relationship. We were on his terrace, looking out over the city, and the words came out of nowhere. What? I turned to stare at him. Move in with me. Your lease is up next month. You're at my place most nights anyway. Why maintain 2 residences when we could have one together? He pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to share breakfast and debate the news. I want to build a life with you, Luna. Not just a relationship, but a real partnership in every sense of the word. I thought about my tiny studio, the place I had fought so hard to afford on my bartender's salary. It represented my independence, my ability to take care of myself. But Damien represented something else, the possibility of shared joy, of building something together that was greater than either of us alone. Yes, I said, and felt the rightness of the decision settle in my bones. Yes, I'll move in with you. His joy was palpable. He spun me around and kissed me thoroughly, and we barely made it inside before things escalated into something more passionate. Later, lying in his bed with the city lights filtering through the windows, I felt a contentment I had never experienced before. The next 6 months were a blur of professional success and personal happiness. The Sterling Grande's rooftop bar continued to receive accolades, cementing my reputation as one of the rising stars in Manhattan's beverage scene. I was profiled in industry magazines, invited to speak at conferences, approached by competitors trying to poach me with increasingly ridiculous offers. Someone offered me a $100,000 signing bonus to jump ship, I told Damien one evening, more amused than tempted. What did you tell them? He asked, not looking up from the financial reports he was reviewing. I told them I'm exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do, with exactly who I want to do it with. Money can't buy that. He set down his papers and pulled me into his lap. I love you. It was the first time he had said it, and the words hung in the air between us, momentous and perfect. I love you too, I whispered back, and knew it was the truest thing I had ever said. The success of the rooftop bar attracted attention beyond industry insiders. We started hosting events for A-list celebrities, powerful politicians, and business titans who valued discretion and exceptional service. Every night brought new challenges and opportunities, and I thrived on the constant evolution of the operation. But the most satisfying moment came 8 months after we opened. I was reviewing inventory in the storage room when one of my bartenders knocked hesitantly on the door. Luna, there's someone here asking to speak with you. He says it's about a job. I looked up from my spreadsheet. We're not hiring right now. Send him to the website to fill out an application. He's insistent. Says he knows you. His name is Greg Thornton. My blood ran cold. Greg. After the incident where he had broken into the bar drunk and threatening, Damien had gotten a restraining order. Greg wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the property. Call security immediately, I said, standing up. I'll handle this. When I emerged from the storage room, I found Greg standing at the entrance to the bar, looking drastically different from the last time I had seen him. He had lost weight, his clothes hung loosely on his frame, and his face was gaunt. But more striking was his demeanor. The aggressive swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine humility. Luna, he said quietly as I approached, 2 security guards flanking him. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Then I'll go, and I won't bother you again. I promise. Every instinct screamed at me to have him removed immediately, but something in his eyes made me pause. This wasn't the drunk, angry man who had terrorized me for years. This was someone who had hit rock bottom and was crawling his way back up. You have 3 minutes, I said coldly, and security stays right here. Fair enough. Greg took a deep breath. I'm here to apologize, not to ask for anything, not to make excuses. Just to apologize. What I did to you at the Velvet Room was wrong. All of it. The verbal abuse, the way I grabbed you, showing up here drunk and threatening. I was a terrible boss and a worse person. You were, I agreed, giving him nothing. I've been in treatment. Alcohol rehab, anger management, therapy, the works. And part of my recovery is making amends to the people I hurt. You were at the top of that list. His voice cracked slightly. I can't get hired anywhere in hospitality now. My reputation is destroyed, and that's my own fault. I'm working as a dishwasher at a diner in New Jersey, trying to rebuild from nothing. But I needed you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. You deserved better. You deserved to work in an environment where your talent was recognized and nurtured, not one where you were constantly diminished. I studied him carefully, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine regret. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, and I'm glad you're getting help. But you need to understand that what you did caused real damage. I have bruises from where you grabbed me. I had panic attacks for weeks after you broke in here. Your actions had consequences beyond just ruining your own career. I know, Greg said miserably. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm trying to be better. Damien appeared then, materializing at my side with the protective instinct that still surprised me sometimes. Is there a problem here? Greg's face went pale at the sight of the man who had destroyed his career with a single decision. No, sir. I was just leaving. Greg came to apologize, I said, putting a hand on Damien's arm to calm him. He's in treatment and making amends. Damien's expression didn't soften. Good. Treatment is important. So is accountability. You traumatized one of the best talents in this industry and tried to destroy her confidence because you felt threatened by her competence. No amount of apologies can undo that damage. I know, Greg repeated, and he looked like he might cry. I know I can't fix what I broke. I just wanted her to know I'm sorry. There was a long silence. Then, surprisingly, Damien spoke again. What diner are you working at? Greg looked confused by the question. Tony's place in Newark. Why? Because I know the owner. I'll call him and let him know you're trying to make amends and get your life together. If you continue to stay sober and work hard, maybe in a year or two, when you've proven you've changed, we can talk about a position in one of my properties. Not in management, he added quickly. Never in management. But dishwashing is honest work, and everyone deserves a second chance if they're genuinely committed to change. I stared at Damien in shock. Greg looked like he might faint. I don't deserve that, Greg stammered. No, you don't, Damien agreed bluntly. But Luna believes in giving people opportunities to grow. And if she can see past what you did to her, then I can extend a conditional olive branch. Conditional on you staying sober, staying in treatment, and proving over an extended period that you've genuinely changed. The moment you slip back into old behaviors, you're done. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you both. Greg's voice was thick with emotion. I won't let you down. You already let us down once, I said firmly. The question is whether you can do better going forward. Time will tell. After Greg left, escorted out by security, I turned to Damien. That was generous. More generous than he deserved. I learned a long time ago that holding grudges only hurts the person doing the holding, Damien said, pulling me close. Greg destroyed his own life through his actions. We didn't need to pile on. And if there's a chance he's genuinely changed, helping him rebuild doesn't cost us anything. Besides, you taught me that everyone deserves a shot at redemption. You got one when I walked into the Velvet Room that night. Why shouldn't he? I kissed him then, right there in the bar with staff and customers watching, not caring about professionalism or appearances. I love you so much. I love you too. Now, want to help me with something? Always. Damien led me to his office and pulled out a set of architectural plans. I'm acquiring a new property in Brooklyn. Historic building. Amazing bones. Perfect location. I want to convert it into a boutique hotel, and I want you to design the entire beverage program for it. Bar, restaurant, room service, events, the whole package. But this time, you'll also oversee the hiring of the food and beverage director who will manage the day-to-day operations. I stared at the plans, excitement and nervousness warring in my chest. You want me to move beyond just bartending? To design entire F&B programs? You've proven you can do it. The Sterling Grande's bar is the most successful component of the entire hotel. Guests book rooms specifically to have access to your bar. You have a gift for understanding what people want before they know they want it. I'd be stupid not to leverage that across all my properties. He leaned against the desk, watching my reaction. This would be a significant promotion. More responsibility, more money, more creative freedom, but also more pressure. You'd be designing programs, not just executing them. Training directors, not just bartenders. Building something from the ground up and then trusting others to maintain it. I want to do it, I said immediately. It's terrifying, but I want to do it. Good. Because I already bought the building and construction starts in 3 months. He grinned at my expression. I had faith you'd say yes. The next year was the busiest and most fulfilling of my life. I threw myself into designing the Brooklyn Properties food and beverage program, traveling to distilleries and vineyards, consulting with chefs, and developing concepts that pushed the boundaries of traditional hotel hospitality. Damien gave me complete creative freedom, trusting my instincts even when they seemed unconventional. At home, our relationship deepened into something that felt unshakable. We had learned to balance professional partnership with personal intimacy, to support each other's ambitions while making time for the quiet moments that kept us grounded. Sunday mornings became sacred, a time when we deliberately unplugged from work and just enjoyed being together. We would cook elaborate breakfasts, read the newspaper, argue good-naturedly about everything from politics to the best way to make hollandaise. "Marry me," Damien said one Sunday morning, the words casual, but his eyes intense. I looked up from the eggs I was scrambling. "What?" "Marry me. I don't have a ring yet, because I wanted to ask you first before I started shopping. I know it's only been 18 months, but Luna, I've never been more certain of anything. You're my partner in every sense of the word. You challenge me, you inspire me, you make me better. I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you, both professionally and personally. So marry me, make it official. Be my wife." I set down the spatula and walked over to him, my heart so full I thought it might burst. "Yes, obviously yes. Did you really think I'd say anything else?" "I hoped," he admitted, pulling me into his arms. "But with you, I've learned not to take anything for granted. You're independent and strong-willed. I never assume I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking that I want to spend the rest of my life with the man who saw my potential when I was being dragged into a storage room by a drunk supervisor. The man who took a chance on me when I had nothing but determination and big dreams. The man who loves me exactly as I am while also pushing me to become even better. So yes, Damien Sterling, I will absolutely marry you." We got engaged officially a week later, after Damien presented me with a ring that was both elegant and understated, perfectly suited to my style. The diamond was significant but not ostentatious, set in a simple platinum band that wouldn't interfere with my work. He proposed again, properly this time, on the rooftop bar we had built together, with the city sparkling below us and a bottle of 30-year-old bourbon that I had been saving for a special occasion. "I've been saving this bourbon for someone who would appreciate it," I told him as I poured 2 glasses. "Someone who understood that the best things in life are worth waiting for. I didn't know it at the time, but I was waiting for you." "To us," Damien said, raising his glass. "To the bartender who became a beverage director, to the partnership that became a love story, and to the future we're going to build together." "To us," I echoed, and we drank to the promise of everything still to come. The wedding was small and intimate, held on the Sterling Grande's rooftop with only close friends and family. My former co-workers from the Velvet Room came, all of them thrilled to see how far I had risen. Even Greg Thornton sent a card, congratulating us and thanking us again for the second chance that had allowed him to rebuild his life. He was still sober, still working hard, and had recently been promoted to kitchen manager at Tony's place. As I stood on the terrace in my simple white dress, looking at Damien in his impeccably tailored suit, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From the night he walked into the Velvet Room and defended me against Greg, through the months of building the bar together, to the moment we admitted our feelings and took a chance on each other. It had been unconventional, complicated, and sometimes scary, but it had also been the best decision of my life. "I love you," I said, as we exchanged vows, my voice carrying clearly in the warm evening air. "I love the way you see potential in people and places that others have written off. I love how you work harder than anyone else while still making time for what matters. I love that you challenged me to dream bigger and then gave me the tools to make those dreams reality. I promise to be your partner in all things, to challenge you as much as you challenge me, and to build a life with you that's worthy of the faith we've placed in each other." Damien's eyes were suspiciously bright as he said his vows. "I love your determination, your creativity, your refusal to settle for anything less than excellence. I love how you remember every customer's story and make each person feel valued. I love that you made me believe in second chances and redemption. I promise to support your ambitions, to trust your instincts, and to never take for granted the gift of having you in my life. You are my best investment, my greatest success, and the love I didn't know I was looking for until you walked into my life." As we sealed our promises with a kiss, I heard the staff from the bar cheering below, their affection genuine and their celebration heartfelt. Mrs. Chen was crying happy tears. Marcus was probably already planning an epic after-party. The team I had built, the family I had chosen, all gathered to witness the beginning of this new chapter. "Ready to build our next project together?" Damien whispered in my ear as we waved to our guests. "Always," I replied. "What did you have in mind?" "How about a family? And maybe expanding the hotel empire to include international properties, and continuing to prove that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared dreams." "That sounds perfect," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Damien and I toasted our marriage with the 30-year-old bourbon I had saved for this exact moment. The taste was complex and rich, with notes of caramel and oak and something indefinable that made it extraordinary. Like our story, it had taken time to develop its full potential, but the wait had been worth it. From bartender being dragged into a storage room by an abusive supervisor, to beverage director married to the man who had rescued her and then become her partner in every sense, my journey had been unexpected and transformative. But as I stood on that rooftop, surrounded by love and possibility, I knew that this was only the beginning. Damien and I had built something remarkable together, and we would continue building for years to come. The supervisor who had tried to break me was now washing dishes and working on his redemption. The bar I had created was the talk of Manhattan. And the man who had seen my potential when no one else did was now my husband, my partner, and the love of my life. Sometimes the best stories start in the darkest moments, when someone reaches out a hand and says, "You deserve better than this." And sometimes, if you're brave enough to take that hand and bold enough to believe in yourself, those stories have the happiest endings of all.